Hello and welcome again to Life with Collective Purpose. And today I have Angela Wieland here with me, and she is the author of our soon to be launched book, The Journey to Authenticity. So we're going to be talking about Angela's journey to authenticity. And first of all, I'm going to just read out her bio that she put in the book. So Angela is a transformational hypnotherapist. She's an empowerment coach, a spiritual guide, an astrologer, and a toe reader. We're going to talk about that in a little while. She channels her lifelong learning, experience, and empathy to help others reframe and transcend life's challenges. Her passion is in expanding consciousness and guiding her clients to reconnect with their innate strength, wisdom, and sovereign personal power, transforming limitations into opportunities for expression, contribution, and purpose. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you, Julie. I'm so excited to be here.
That's great. So, Angela, tell me, what is a toe reader?
Well, everybody asks me that. Toe reading is a metaphysical modality that really works on the concept that there's meridians in the body, such as what's used in acupuncture, acupressure, et cetera, and essentially our thoughts, our stories, which feeds into what my chapter is about, will be reflected on the material plane, in that our thoughts become things. Our thoughts become things. So as we have these repetitive thoughts, these stories, the way that we frame things, they become materialized in the toes. And the toes, well, without getting too into the details, they change as we change.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to have a toe reading from you at some point. I've never heard of it, but I love it. I love the concept. And yes, and it just ties very well into your chapter in this book, because of course you talk about your journey to authenticity. And that is actually the title of the book, Journey to Authenticity. So I love that your chapter really talks about this topic and in terms of the actual journey. And I love what you said when you said that you cannot know who you are authentically until you can deeply identify with yourself. And of course, it's very easy for us not to know who we are. So you said in your chapter, authenticity requires that we know who we are. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, doesn't everybody know who they are?
Well, I think that we know who we are, and maybe some people are fortunate enough that they really do know. And I think that we have a pretty good idea when we're children, but then as things step in, whether that's experiences, whether that's societal conditioning, whether that, just the influence, family, friends, church, schooling, et cetera, I think that whether we're consciously aware of it or not, I think that we pick up on things and that does influence us. And I think, yeah, I mean, different experiences, even relationships you have, everything feeds into the way that we perceive our reality, right? And so I think that for myself, yeah, I had a good idea of who I was, but and as my chapter speaks to, there are several things that I was, quote, good at, very capable of, but perhaps they didn't rouse within me what I'm finding now at this point in my life is really important, is really pursuing my joy, my things that excite me, things that I have this childlike enthusiasm about. And I think that, yeah, that's, for me, it's been about reclaiming these things, or perhaps there's things that maybe you are aware that you really have a passion for, but there is a influence perhaps in your family or likewise that these things are not acceptable. And so we start to kind of ignore them, push them down, negate them, and say, well, it's more socially acceptable, or it's more, I'm not going to have to do this or do that if I, for example, pursue a finance degree, right? Like that is, nobody's going to really have an issue with that. I'm not going to have to explain myself. I'm not going to have to feel uncomfortable. And I think I'm just at the point in my life now, though, where I'm really not, I'm still working on it, but I think I am really much more clear on this is where I'm going and this is what excites me and this is what doesn't.
Right, right. You know, and it's really interesting actually, because I mean, I can really identify with this because I think often consciously we're not aware of how much we are influenced by our parents, by our peers, by our friends. And particularly, you know, I think as when you're younger, you don't realize how much you're being influenced by other people. I mean, I know for sure that when I left England at the age of 32, one of the reasons that I left is because I realized that I wasn't living my life at all. I was basically living my dad's life. I was living what my dad, what, you know, I was living what his expectations were. And you know, and that wasn't me, but I never realized it wasn't me. So I think it's really interesting that a lot of us go through that, where they, you know, you actually, it's almost like a wake-up call. Now I know you did actually have a wake-up call, right? So you talk about it in your chapter, and you actually did have a wake-up call. Maybe you can tell us just a little bit about that, Angela, that moment when you had that awareness, oh, maybe this isn't me.
Well, I think that for me, it was a little more complicated than that. It wasn't just a lack of authenticity. I had for many, many years really internalized a lot of dysfunction from my childhood in a way that was truly limiting. I mean, there was a lot of issues with self-worth, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think I had been on the spiritual path, on the transformational journey for many years. I mean, 30 years at least, more. And so I had always been seeking. And really a lot of that was because there was this very deep discomfort within me and a lot of pain, a lot of yeah, just a lot of obstacles, a lot of challenges across the board. And so I think I'd always been searching and
Right.
had tried many, many things. And I think that for me, it just and I really believe this, that when the timing is right, when the stars align, so to speak, then they do. And I think that I had a moment, yes, what you're referring to, I believe, is what I shared in the book, that last year I had been, you know, it was nothing new. I was looking to do some healing work, you know, to really empower myself, et cetera, et cetera. And I stumbled upon a course that was being offered, and I really honestly didn't have a lot of faith that this was going to be any different, because I always had, of course, a lot of hope that things would change, would really, really get to the bottom of things, but they really never did. But there was something about this program that compelled me, and I ended up signing up, and it really was the jump start for me. I think yeah, I think it was the material, but I also think there was something within me that was just, the timing was such that it was, you know, things had bubbled up. And I mean, I already knew that. I was kind of sick of myself and sick of feeling certain ways, to be quite
Right.
frank. And so, yeah.
So it's interesting because you start your chapter by talking about how you realized that you were really deeply identifying with your victim story, which is really what you were just talking about there, that, you know, you're letting what happened to you in your childhood and let that be responsible for how you live your life. You know, oh, this happens to me because of this, and this happens to me because of that. So tell us a little bit about that, and in terms of how did you realize that you were like living a victim story?
Well, I think that as my consciousness was growing, I also was attracting people into my life, and not even significant people. I'm not talking about partners or even close friends, but even just acquaintances I was attracting that were starting to reflect some of this stuff back. And it really is interesting when we are ready to transmute, to grow, that we do start, well, whatever, we attract to us what we are and what we're ready for, right? And so I think that for me, it was just, yeah, it was time. And yeah, like I said, I was really tired of the same old story. And I was seeing how I was stuck in these same loops, whether that was in relationships, whether that was in even daily habits. You know, I really was ready for a breakthrough. And I believe the whole process of life is an alchemical journey, you know, and we can choose what we are ready for and what we're, you know, and then we will attract what will propel us to our next level, our next step.
Yes, yes. And you know, I loved what you said in your chapter. I think you were quoting somebody else from one of the many books and other resources in your healing journey. But you said words are spells, and I was like, oh wow! That is so powerful. Words are spells. Tell us a little bit about that. How are words spells?
Well, our languaging is super important, and really what we are broadcasting is what we are attracting. And that is not so the words that we're using, the way that we're thinking or describing ourselves, and that could be externally to others or just internally, it is broadcasting out. And that is what we end up attracting more of, which reinforces the way that we view ourselves. So if we are in a victim consciousness, we keep saying things that attract more things to us that perpetuate the notion that that's how it is. So until there's an awareness and a level of consciousness that that's what's going on, we just keep going in the same circle, in the same pattern, and attracting things that just reinforce our beliefs and attract, you know, whatever. And so I think I'm very conscious, or at least I try to be very conscious of the words I'm choosing. And, you know, an example is, instead of saying, I am sick, for example, or it's like, at this moment, there is something going on. I mean, just very simple languaging, instead of especially using things that are linked with identity and identifying that I am this, I am that,
Yes.
is really important.
Yeah, you know, it reminds me of somebody that I know here in Puerto Vallarta, and she's 80 years old, and she had to go to the US for a pretty major operation, and she's very well known. So you know, everybody was asking her, you know, oh, what's wrong? What is the operation you're having, etc. And all she would say is, oh, I'm going on a health sabbatical. So she reworded it, instead of even saying, oh, I've got cancer, or, you know, I'm having a major operation, or she just called it a health sabbatical. So I thought it was really great that her words, and very mindful of you know, saying the right thing, particularly because she's got so much energy around that, and there's so many people talking about it and asking her about it. So I think that's a really good example of, you know, of your words very carefully.
Absolutely. Well, for example, when I was training as a hypnotherapist, it's really, that is where you really have to be careful, because you don't say, it's like I'm smoke free. It's like it's you don't want to use the word don't, or it's just like I'm
Right.
anti-war, because whatever you are against, you're propelling towards you. So she is a very wise woman, clearly. Instead of saying I'm going to treat my illness or my disease, I am going to boost my health. So
Yeah.
just being conscious of things like that. And I think that for me, just coming back to, I didn't realize I was in victim consciousness until I was able to get enough detachment and to realize by having somebody, this mentor, point out to me how identified I was with my thinking. Because of course, this is just who you think you are. You don't think, oh, I'm doing this. You are identified with your thoughts. You think that is who you are. And so until you can see that separation, that doesn't necessarily immediately stop the thoughts, but then you can create enough space to witness the thoughts so that you can start to divorce yourself from them, to create better feeling thoughts, and to start reprogramming the neural pathways so that they are reflecting what you're wanting to attract as opposed to what you're not.
I love that, Angela. And I love that this is all information for people to really understand, you know, what does it mean to be authentic? Because, you know, it's a word that we use a lot. We use that word. It seems to be almost a trendy word right now, you know, being authentic. I like what you say in your chapter when you talk about being aware of your thoughts as well as your words, being aware of your thoughts. And you talk about that you felt that before you were very stuck in your head, that everything was in your mind, that you had these thoughts, and that you were stuck in your head. So what do you mean by being stuck in your head? Explain that to our listeners.
Well, I feel like so many of us are stuck in our head, right? I mean, we're operating out of a place of the mind as opposed to the heart or even the body, right? The gut. I mean, we're coming from this place of just this repeat, these thoughts, whatever it is. A lot of them are very disempowering, but again, we're not even really aware that we're doing this to ourselves. So, you know, I think that for me, it was super important to become really embodied and to just be aware. Again, this isn't something that you just turn a switch and you stop having the thoughts, but it's just to start, oh, there it is again. There's that thought that really doesn't feel very good that I've actually been thinking off and on since I was a child or since whenever. And to just, if we don't catch it, then we can't change it. So it's just starting to take a step back and again witnessing the thoughts. You know, the metaphor usually given is as clouds in the sky, right, as opposed to identifying with them. And I think that's a necessary step in order to break out of the circular thinking, the being stuck in your mind. Right, because I'm just a very analytical person, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it was necessary for me to really start getting into the body and into my feelings, which, you know, hadn't necessarily been safe when I was younger. But it's also, you know, there's so much to it. There's the whole reparenting concept. And yeah, that isn't something I spoke to in my chapter, but yeah, just creating for ourselves perhaps what we didn't have, and just stepping into that role.
It's all about really being consciously aware, and you can't really start exploring, you know, what is the authentic you until you become consciously aware of your thoughts and your behavior and how you're operating in the world. So that's really the first step, isn't it? That you've got to become consciously aware of who you are in the world.
Absolutely. And I think that there is that process that you're alluding to of really stripping back the layers,
Mm.
is this really me? Is this where did this come from? Is this, based on something my dad said to me when I was 6? I picked up this belief that actually then went on to influence all these decisions, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it really is a process for me. It has been, at least, of getting to really know who I am, and looking back and what really used to light me up, for example, when I was 7 years old or 10 years old. And, that's a good indication of likely what our life calling is what
Yes.
things that excited us when we were children.
Mhm.
So, yeah, but it really is a process of getting to know ourselves again.
Yes.
Because so
Yes.
much of what we become is societal conditioning, and it's just coping skills, it's defense mechanisms,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it's a very complex and deep well.
It is. It is. And I mean, and that's why it's so awesome to see that there are, 10 stories in total in this book of different authors that are giving different perspectives about what it means to be authentic. And I think you just set the framework really nicely, in terms of asking that question, what does it mean to be authentic, and what is the journey, and how do we start on that journey? How do we have that initial awareness, to say, who am I, and what is the real me, and what is the me that's influenced by other people, or what is the me that speaks because I want to be seen in a certain way. So the way that we project ourselves in the public, is the way that we think the people are going to perceive us. And I mean, I know for myself is I got to the point where I get exhausted by attending networking groups, particularly on a Zoom like this, where people kind of blank over, and you see them reading what they do. You say to somebody, oh, so what's your passion? And they're sort of like, they go, well, my passion is to help people and to inspire them too. And you can see them actually reading it, and it's like, how can that be authentic when you're practicing it? You're practicing, what you're saying and how you're saying, instead of speaking from the heart, right? And that is, it's important to be able to make that distinction as well.
Absolutely, I would agree with you, but I think that something that genuinely lights us up doesn't need to be scripted, because it is just
Mhm.
so a part of our core, and it just pours forth, right?
Yes.
And I think that is a process of getting in touch with that. And it's not just how I'm presenting, but what am I also potentially omitting about myself? What am I keeping close to my chest because for fear of how it might be perceived, right?
Mhm.
It's not even so much about just putting on a show, but also, if I say this or if I show this about myself, and the reality is we're never going to be for everyone,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it's like, it's good if people don't like you, because I would rather attract the people that are genuinely for me and that are going to resonate with me than be this bland, like, script prompter person that you're
Mhm.
talking about, because you're just, I think that's just not how reality works. Not everyone's going to
Yes.
like us. Not everyone's going to resonate with us. And so we have to be good with us. We have to live with ourselves.
Yes.
And the more that we can really be true to who we are, um, I think that's inspiring for others, and it gives them permission to do the same thing. And for me, I always had a very outspoken quality when I was younger, and I kind of tempered that down. It wasn't even necessary. It was something I did to myself. It wasn't that I necessarily even had anybody directly doing that. But I feel like that is what's coming up in me more, is just to really embrace, if I'm a bold, strong personality, so be it. That is going to be a great fit for some people, and for others, then if it's not, then that's okay, and to just
Absolutely.
be okay with who we are and let the chips fall where they will.
Yes, I love that you say that, because I think it's really important to be okay with being the authentic you, because I think that's it's very true that when you are bold and you are honest and you're direct and you really step into being authentic, there's going to be people that don't like that because we're not people pleasing anymore, right?
This is true. Yes, this is very true. Yeah, no, and
Yeah.
and I think again, it could be a process. It's not like you're going to go from, if you're in that kind of space, to all of a sudden be 100% authentic, but just what you can. I mean, baby steps, as they say,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Yes.
and so, yeah, and again, it's a process of deconditioning, I think.
Yes.
Before we can also, it's like you got to strip away in order to step into a lot of times.
I love that.
So
Well,
for me, I've just been also really conscious about the company I keep, right? Because the
right.
company you keep creates your destiny. It's kind of like the words or spells, and just that surround myself with people that have balls, so to speak, to really speak their truth and to live really authentically and to walk the talk, to be raw, to be vulnerable when it needs to be. And I think that people are hungry for that, honestly, because
Yes.
there has been
Yes.
just so much, I don't know, vanilla, for lack of a better word, that
Mhm.
it's good to stir the pot a bit and to just be real.
Yes. Just be real. Now that's a beautiful way to end this interview. Wise words from Angela. Just be real. I love that. So Angela, if people want to engage with you, if they want to connect with you, what is the best way for them to get hold of you?
Well, you can check my website. I do need to, I'll just do say a caveat. I do need to redo it, but it works for now. I'm going to be adding some of my offerings, like astrology and so forth, that are not reflected there. But that website, it's www.angela-wieland, which is WIELAND.com. And there is a way to contact me there, or email or phone. I also, well, I have an Instagram, but that also is linked on there. It's specific for my toe reading. But like I said, I'm revamping my website, but that's probably the easiest way.
Okay, that's super. So Angela-Wieland.com is the best way to get hold of Angela. And Angela, at some point we're going to have to connect, and I'm going to need my toes to be read.
You got it. Yeah, it's I get really great feedback from that. People are intrigued by it and get a lot out of it. So be happy.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. And I'm really looking forward to the book launch in a few weeks. And our readers will be able to get access to that book on Amazon. The title of it is The Journey to Authenticity. So thank you for joining me, Angela, and we will see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.